I always thought the dead were quiet. But that night, in the room they called the nursery, I learned that silence is just a scream waiting to be heard. Nightbound Bloodline presents 5 ghost stories based on true accounts. Every town has its haunted house. Every family, its whispered secrets. The stories you are about to hear were sent to us from ordinary people, teachers, nurses, students, who lived through something extraordinary. They have asked for their names to be changed, but the terror they describe remains, unaltered and utterly real. These are not campfire tales. These are testimonies. Story 1. The Nursery at Blackwood Manor. My name is Eleanor. At the time, I was 24, a graduate student in architectural history. I'd never believed in ghosts. I believed in mortar, brick, and provenance, things you could touch and document. When I took a summer job as a live-in cataloger at the historic Blackwood Manor, my friends joked about it being haunted. I laughed with them. I wasn't there for ghost stories. I was there for the blueprints. The manor was a colossal, Victorian-era thing, all gables and widows' walks, sitting on a cliff overlooking the sea. It was beautiful, but in a sad, decaying way. The family that owned it lived in the modern wing, and I had a small room in the servants' quarters. The rest of the house was mine to document after dark. The air always smelled of lemon polish and old, wet stone, and it was never truly quiet. The house settled with groans that sounded like sighs, and the sea wind whistled through a crack in a window pane I could never quite locate. My 3rd week there, Mrs. Blackwood mentioned the old nursery on the 3rd floor. "We don't use it anymore," she said, her tone a little too casual. "Just boxed up some of the older toys. You can skip it for your inventory." Of course, that was the first place I went that night. Historian's curiosity. The door to the nursery was heavier than the others, swollen in its frame. It opened with a groan that ripped through the silent hallway. The room was freezing, a deep, damp cold that clung to my skin. Moonlight streamed through a large bay window, illuminating a single, ancient rocking horse in the center of the room. Its paint was chipped, its eyes were 2 dark, vacant holes. And that's when I heard it. Faint at first, a rhythmic, wooden creak. I shone my flashlight around. Nothing. The sound got a little louder, a little clearer. It was the sound of a rocking chair. I spun around. There, in the far corner, shrouded in shadow, was a high-backed rocking chair. And it was moving, slowly, back and forth, as if someone had just gotten up from it. But I was alone. I told myself it was a draft, the house settling. But the air was perfectly still. The creaking stopped. And then, I heard the giggle. It was a child's laugh. High-pitched and bright, but wrong. It was muffled, like it was coming from under a blanket or through a wall. It came from right beside me. My blood turned to ice. I swung my flashlight beam, and it landed on a small, porcelain-faced doll propped on a shelf. Its head was turned at an angle it hadn't been before. Its glassy eyes seemed to follow me. The giggle came again, this time from the other side of the room, near the window. I saw a brief, small shadow dart across the moonlit floorboards. There was no one there to cast it. That's when the cold became unbearable. My breath plumed in the air, and a new smell cut through the dust and polish, the sweet, cloying scent of spoiled milk and old roses. I felt a small, impossibly cold hand slip into mine. I yanked my hand back with a gasp. The giggling turned into a petulant, angry whine. "Don't you want to play?" A tiny voice whispered, right by my ear. The rocking chair in the corner began to rock violently, slamming against the floorboards. Thump, creak, thump, creak. The porcelain doll on the shelf trembled and fell, shattering on the floor. From the hallway, I heard the distinct, skipping patter of small, bare feet running towards the door. I was frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The small, cold hand grabbed my wrist this time, its grip shockingly strong. It started to pull me, tugging me towards the dark, open closet in the corner. I could feel a dreadful, empty loneliness pouring from that tiny, invisible hand. a sadness so profound it felt like drowning. I screamed. I wrenched my arm free, stumbling backwards out of the room and slamming the heavy door shut. I leaned against it, sobbing, and from the other side, I heard one last, furious little sob before everything went silent. The cold vanished. I never went back to the third floor. I packed my bags at dawn and left. I told the Blackwoods a family emergency had come up. I never finished the inventory. To this day, I can't be around children I don't know. The sound of a rocking chair makes my skin crawl. And sometimes, just as I'm falling asleep, I'll catch the faint, sweet smell of spoiled milk. I know it wasn't a dream. I know that some lonely, forgotten child, is still waiting in that nursery. And it's still looking for someone to play with. Story 2. The Highwayman of Route 40. Name's Ben. I'm a long-haul trucker. Been driving the I-40 corridor for 15 years. You see a lot of strange things on the road at 3 a.m. Deer in the headlights, fog that doesn't make sense. But you learn to shrug it off. My cab is my office, and my only beliefs are in my logbook and a full tank of diesel. I don't have time for spooks. This was last November. I was on a lonely stretch of Route 40 in Arizona, just past the petrified forest. It was pouring rain, a real gully washer. The kind that makes the world shrink to the 10 feet of asphalt in front of your headlights. My radio was all static, so it was just me, the drum of the rain, and the swish of my tires on the wet blacktop. I was fighting to stay awake, focusing on the broken white line, counting the miles to the next truck stop. That's when I saw him. A figure standing under an overpass up ahead. Just a dark silhouette against the concrete. As I got closer, the details snapped into focus in my high beams. He was wearing a long, tattered duster coat and a wide-brimmed hat, soaked through. He was standing right on the shoulder, his back to the traffic, just staring at the rock face of the overpass. No broken-down car, no backpack, nothing. In the middle of a torrential downpour, miles from anywhere. A cold knot tightened in my gut. It was wrong, all wrong. But you hear stories, right? Hitchhikers, weirdos. I blew past him, my rig kicking up a wall of water. I glanced in my side mirror, half expecting to see him gone. But he was still there. Only now, he was facing the road. And I could have sworn, in that split-second glimpse, that his face was just a pale, featureless oval. I tried to shake it off. A trick of the light, the rain distorting things. I cranked up the static on the radio just for the noise. About 10 miles down the road, the rain led up to a drizzle. And that's when I saw him again. Same coat, same hat, standing under another overpass, in the exact same posture, staring at the wall. My blood went cold. There was no way he could have gotten ahead of me. I was doing 70. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. As I roared past, I forced myself to look. He was still facing the wall. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles were white, my eyes glued to the mirrors. He didn't move. 20 more miles. The rain had almost stopped. My headlights cut a tunnel through the lingering fog. And there he was. A third time, under a third overpass. This time, he wasn't facing the wall. He was standing parallel to the road, his head turned, watching the traffic lane, waiting. As my lights hit him, I saw it clearly. The duster was old, rotting, caked with what looked like ancient mud. And the face, God, the face. It wasn't featureless. It was long and gaunt, with sunken eyes that held no reflection of my headlights. They were just dark pits, and his skin was the color of old bone, slick with rain. He looked like a man who had been dug up from a wet grave. I flew past him, a silent scream caught in my throat. I didn't dare look back. I just stared ahead, praying for the next exit, for any sign of other life. A few minutes later, I saw the glow of taillights in the distance. Another truck. Relief flooded through me. I pulled up behind him, close enough to see the mud flaps, just to feel like I wasn't alone in this nightmare. That's when I saw it. Reflected in the side mirror of the truck in front of me was a face. It was him. The highwayman. His pale, ghastly face was right there, in the reflection, staring back at me from the mirror of the truck ahead. He was in my blind spot, riding with me. I swerved, nearly losing control. I hit the brakes, dropping back, my eyes darting frantically to my own side mirrors. Nothing. He was gone. I looked ahead. The reflection in the other truck's mirror was empty. I was hyperventilating. And then, a soft, rhythmic sound started to rise above the engine and the road noise. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the passenger side door. Something was knocking on my cab. I didn't look. I stomped on the gas, pushing my rig to its limit. I didn't slow down until I saw the blazing lights of the next truck stop, a beautiful oasis of neon and diesel fumes. I pulled in, parked between two other 18-wheelers, and just sat there, shaking. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the diner, drinking coffee I couldn't taste, surrounded by people. I've driven that stretch 100 times since. In the daylight, it's just a road. But I won't drive it at night anymore. Not in the rain. And I never, ever look at the reflections in the mirrors of other trucks. Because I know what I saw. That wasn't a hitchhiker. That was something that claims that stretch of road. And he's still out there, waiting for a lone driver on a rainy night. Story 3. The Shadow in the Steel Mill. I'm Maria. I worked security at the old Jones and Laughlin Steel Mill for 8 years, right up until it shut down for good. I'm a union woman, a mother of 3. I don't scare easy. An empty mill is a loud place, full of creaks, drips, and the ghosts of industry. But the thing in the Bessemer converter house, that wasn't a ghost of industry. It was something else. This was my final week on the job. The place was a skeleton, most of the equipment already sold for scrap. My patrol route took me through the converter house, a cavernous building where they used to pour molten steel. It was a cathedral of rust and shadows. Your flashlight beam would get swallowed by the sheer scale of the place. The air was thick with the smell of iron oxide, old grease, and ozone. Always ozone, like after a lightning strike. The other guards talked about the tapper, some old legend about a worker who fell into a vat. They said he tapped on the pipes, looking for a way out. I never paid it any mind. Until my last patrol. I was doing my round, my boots echoing on the grid floor. Clang, clang, clang. And then I heard it. Another set of footsteps, falling in between mine. I stopped. The other footsteps took 2 more steps, then stopped. I shone my light down the long aisle between the massive, dormant converters. Nothing. I started walking again, slower this time. Clang, clang. The other footsteps matched my pace, step for step, but from about 50 feet behind me. I called out, "This is security. Identify yourself." The only answer was the echo of my own voice. And then, the smell hit me. That ozone smell intensified, sharp and metallic, burning the back of my throat. And underneath it, a new smell. The smell of slag, of cooling, molten rock. But the furnaces had been cold for years. I spun around, sweeping my flashlight beam. The footsteps had stopped. But at the very edge of my light, where the darkness was thickest, I saw a shadow that was wrong. It was taller than a man and too thin, its limbs elongated and twisted. It didn't move like a person. It was more of a shudder, a vibration in the air, and the temperature around me began to climb. It was a dry, intense heat, the kind that radiates from a freshly poured ingot. I was sweating, but it was a cold sweat. The air shouldn't have been hot. The place had been dead for months. I raised my radio to call it in, but all that came out was a burst of screeching static. The shadow shuddered again, and then it stepped forward into the edge of my light. It wasn't a man. It was a silhouette of a man, but made of something solid. Not darkness. It was the color of cooling steel, a dull, matte gray, and its surface seemed to ripple like heat haze on a summer road. It had no face, no features, just a smooth, oval head. But I could feel it looking at me. I could feel a wave of pure, focused malice. This thing wasn't lost. It was angry. It was hateful. And it was between me and the only exit. It started moving towards me. It didn't walk. It glided, its feet not quite touching the metal floor, and as it moved, a sound started to emanate from it. A low, rhythmic clang, 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 like a hammer slowly striking a steel plate. It was the tapper, but it wasn't tapping for help. It was tapping a death knell. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. The heat became unbearable, like I was standing in front of an open furnace door. The thing raised one of its long, slender arms, and I saw that its hand wasn't a hand at all, but a molten, glowing hook, dripping something that sizzled and smoked as it hit the floor. It was hurting me, pushing me deeper into the converter house, towards the pit where they used to pour the steel. I knew if it got me into that pit, I was finished. I turned and I ran. I didn't look back. I could hear that gliding sound right behind me, the clang of its steps keeping perfect time with my panicked footfalls, the blistering heat searing the back of my neck. I burst out of the converter house into the cool night air and didn't stop running until I reached the security office. I was gasping, my uniform soaked through with sweat. I quit on the spot. I didn't care about the final paycheck. I never set foot in that mill again. To this day, the smell of welding or the sound of a hammer on metal sends me right back there. That thing, it wasn't the ghost of a worker. I think it was the ghost of the mill itself. The anger of the fire and the steel given a shape. And I believe it's still there, in that empty building, waiting for the next person to wander into its domain. Story 4. The Lighthouse Keeper's Guest. My name is Thomas Evans. I was the keeper of the Seraph Point Lighthouse for 30 years. It's an isolated place, a spit of rock a mile off the coast of Maine. You learn to love the solitude, the company of gulls, and the sea. My wife, Clara, passed 5 years before I retired. After that, it was just me and the light. I was a practical man. I believed in the tide charts, the weather glass, and the steady beam of my lamp. I didn't believe in spirits. The sea is harsh enough on its own. It was the autumn of my final year. A nor'easter was brewing, one of the worst I'd seen. The wind was a constant scream, and the waves were hitting the rocks like cannon fire. The lighthouse trembled with every impact. I was up in the lamp room, watching the storm rage, making sure the light never faltered. It was a long, lonely vigil. Around 2 a.m., through the spray-streaked glass, I saw a figure on the rocks below. A woman in a white dress, standing perilously close to the surging water. My heart leapt into my throat. A shipwreck survivor. I grabbed my heavy weather coat and rushed down, fighting the wind to get the door open. I called out to her, but my voice was torn away by the gale. She was just standing there, her back to me, her dress whipping in the storm, but utterly dry. The sea spray, which was drenching me in seconds, didn't seem to touch her. That was the first wrong thing. The second was the silence that seemed to surround her. The roar of the wind and waves felt muted near her, like I'd stepped into a pocket of dead air. "Miss," I shouted, "you have to come inside. It's not safe." She slowly began to turn, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. She turned, and she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Her hair was dark as kelp, her skin pale as sea foam. But her eyes, they were the color of the deep ocean, and they held a sadness so ancient and profound it felt like a physical weight. She smiled at me, a gentle, heartbreaking smile, and raised a hand, pointing back towards the lighthouse. I knew, in that moment, with a certainty that froze my soul, that this was no survivor. No human could stand dry in that tempest. But the loneliness, the years without Clara, they clouded my judgment. I was mesmerized. I took a step back, a silent invitation. She glided towards me, her feet not seeming to touch the wet, treacherous rocks. As she passed me to enter the lighthouse, the smell hit me. It wasn't the salt and rot of the sea. It was the scent of ozone before a lightning strike, mixed with night-blooming jasmine, a flower that couldn't possibly grow on that barren rock. She moved up the spiral staircase ahead of me, and I followed, my heart a confused drum of fear and a strange, desperate longing. When we entered the main living quarters, she went straight to the fireplace, which was blazing against the chill. She stood before it, but she cast no shadow. The flames danced right through her. She turned to me, and her gentle smile was gone. Her expression was now one of deep, gnawing hunger. "The light grows cold," she whispered, and her voice was the sound of water filling a sinking ship. "I have been so alone in the dark." She reached for me, and I saw that her hands, so graceful from a distance, were webbed between the fingers, and her nails were long and dark, like polished mussel shells. I stumbled back against my chair. She began to circle me, her form flickering slightly, like a reflection on disturbed water. "You are lonely too, Keeper," she hissed. "Stay with me. Let the light go out. We can keep each other company in the endless deep." The air grew heavy and wet, and I felt an immense, drowsy pressure, as if I were sinking into the abyss. I fought to keep my eyes open, to look at the storm lamp, to remember my duty. The light. I had to keep the light burning. With a strength I didn't know I had, I gripped the iron railing of the stairwell and roared, "This is my house. You are not welcome here." I focused everything I had on the great lamp spinning above us. I thought of its purpose, its warning, its steadfastness. The woman, the thing, let out a shriek that was the sound of tearing metal and a drowning gasp combined. She recoiled from me, her form dissolving into a spray of cold salt mist that soaked me to the bone. The jasmine and ozone smell vanished, replaced by the familiar, honest stink of the storm. I spent the rest of the night in the lamp room, my hand on the machinery, never letting the light falter. I retired 2 months later. I live inland now, as far from the sea as I can get. But some nights, when the wind is right, I can still smell jasmine on the air, and I hear a distant, whispering plea. She's still out there, and she's still lonely. Story 5. The Substitute. My name is Chloe. I was a substitute teacher, fresh out of college, full of ideas and that naive belief that I could handle anything a classroom could throw at me. I was assigned to a long-term sub position for a second grade class at Oakwood Elementary. It was an old school, built in the 50s, with those long, echoing hallways and high windows. The kids were great, energetic, funny, but there was one little boy, Sam, who was always drawing the same picture. It was a crayon drawing of a man. The man was always tall, with long, long fingers and a wide, smiling mouth full of square, blocky teeth. He wore a suit, Sam said, a shadow suit. The other teachers told me Sam had an active imagination, that he'd lost his father young. I understood that. I encouraged his art. But the drawings, there was a consistency to them that was unnerving. The man was always in the background of his pictures, behind a swing set, outside a classroom window, standing in the far corner of his bedroom. And he was always smiling that same, empty, toothy smile. One Tuesday, after the final bell, I was tidying the classroom alone. I found one of Sam's drawings crumpled in the trash. It was the man in the shadow suit, but this time, he was standing right next to a stick figure that was clearly me, with yellow crayon for my hair. The man's long, finger-like hand was resting on the stick figure's shoulder. It made my skin crawl. I shook it off. A child's fantasy. Later, as I was gathering my things to leave, I heard a soft, rhythmic sound from the hallway. Tap, scrape, tap, scrape, like someone walking with a limp, one foot dragging slightly. I peered out. The hall was empty, lit only by the emergency exit signs. But the sound continued, moving away, around the corner. I told myself it was the janitor. But I knew the janitor had clocked out an hour ago.